Happy Independence Day, folks. O-Dog says the same. So who were the 56 people who signed the Declaration of Independence? And by their signing it, committed the ultimate act of treason against the king. We've all heard of Franklin, Adams, Hancock, Jefferson, the famous guys who signed it. But who are the other ones? The nobodies, the average Joes. I can tell you the ones who didn't sign it. George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, Patrick Henry. Their names weren't on it. So out of the ones who did sign it, Benjamin Franklin was the one who was really old, I guess you could say. 18 of the men were under 40, and 3 were in their 20s. Out of the 56, almost half, 24 of them, were judges and lawyers. 11 of them were merchants, 9 were landowners and farmers, and then the remaining 12 was doctors, ministers, politicians, things like that. There was only a few exceptions, like Samuel Adams of Massachusetts. He didn't have a lot, and there was a couple others, but everybody else who signed that had substantial property. I mean, they had economic security. They could have just paid the tax, said, you know what, to hell with it, we don't have time to fight it. Just pay it and move on. But they didn't. Just about everybody who signed it had more to lose by signing it than they did to gain by it. So old John Hancock, he was one of the richest men in America at the time, and he already had a price of 500 pounds put on his head by the king. King wanted his ass. So he signed it in enormous letters so the king didn't have to wear his glasses to see his name. But every guy who signed it knew that the penalty of treason was death by hanging, and the British fleet was already in New York Harbor, so they were right there ready to roll. But that's where Ben Franklin said, indeed, we must all hang together, or most assuredly, we will all hang separately. These guys weren't a bunch of hotheads looking for a fight. They weren't a bunch of drunks that, I'm going to whip the king's ass. That wasn't none of it. They wanted what everybody else in Great Britain had. They wanted taxation with representation. They were fighting for the principle of it, not fame and fortune. 2 of the signers went on to become presidents of the United States. 7 of them became governors. 1 died in office as vice president of the United States, and then several of them went on to become senators and things like that. 1 went on to become the richest man in America and founded the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad in 1828. And there was 1 delegate from Philadelphia, Francis Hopkinson, and it was him who designed the U.S. flag, not Betsy Ross. Richard Henry Lee from Virginia, he's the one who introduced the resolution to adopt the Declaration of Independence. So the resolution was formally adopted on July 4th, 1776. It wasn't until July 8th that 2 states go ahead and gave their delegates the go-ahead to sign it. And then finally, August 2nd is when everybody else met and put their name to the paper. William Ellery, delegate from Rhode Island, he was curious to see everybody's faces as they signed it, because it was the ultimate act of treason. You were going to be put to death if they caught you. Some men signed it quickly and got it over with, but in nobody's face did he see fear. Stephen Hopkins, he was also a delegate from Rhode Island. He was over 60 years old, and he signed it with a shaking hand. But he told the other delegates, my hand trembles, but my heart does not. So even before the list of names was officially published as to who signed it, the British started making a list, saying, we're going to get these guys. Francis Lewis from New York saw his home plundered, everything destroyed. They captured his wife, treated her with great brutality. Later on in the war, they was able to exchange her for 2 British soldiers, but she died from the effects of the abuse. William Floyd, another New York delegate, he was able to escape into Connecticut with his wife and children, where they lived for 7 years with no income. The time they come back home, everything was gone, completely ruined. Philip Livingstone had vast holdings in the state of New York. Every bit of it was confiscated. Him and his family was driven out of their home. He died in 1778, still working for Congress for the cause. Louis Morris from New York saw all of his timber, his crops, his home, everything was taken. He was barred from seeing his family for 7 years. John Hart out of Trenton, New Jersey, risked his life to go home to see his dying wife. Hessian soldiers rode behind him, trying to hunt him down. He slept in caves and out in the woods. And when he finally got home, his wife had died and his 13 children had been taken away. Never saw any of them ever again. And he died a broken man. Never seen his family again the rest of his life. Dr. John Witherspoon was the president of the College of New Jersey, which later went on to be Princeton. British troops came in, burnt the college down, burnt the finest library in the U.S. at the time. Judge Richard Stockton from New Jersey rushed home to get his wife and kids, and luckily a neighbor had gave him refuge, kind of kept it quiet that they were there, but then somebody betrayed him, ratted him out. Soldiers showed up, drug him and his family from their beds in the middle of the night, beat him brutally, deliberately starved him. After several years, they was able to arrange a prisoner exchange for him, but by then he was an invalid, couldn't harm the British cause anymore, so they let him go. and his family was forced to live off charity the rest of their life. Robert Morris was a man of great wealth. So George Washington would come to him and say, man, I need ships, I need weapons, I need this and that. And so he used all of his own money and kept Washington in supplies as best he could, which actually made it possible for Washington to make it across the Delaware. But by the time the war was over, he had lost his entire fortune and was basically broke. George Clymer from Pennsylvania, luckily he was able to escape with his family, but his entire estate, land, everything was destroyed and burned by the British soldiers in the Germantown and Brandywine campaigns. Dr. Benjamin Rush, he was from Pennsylvania, and he was actually a very heroic surgeon in the Army, and he had several narrow escapes, and to my knowledge, he come out of the war unscathed. John Martin lived in a strongly loyalist part of Pennsylvania, so when he came out for independence, everybody ostracized him. His family, his friends, everybody hated him for that fact. And he was captured, and he was tortured, and his last words were, basically, these guys are going to see that by me signing the Declaration of Independence was the greatest service that I have ever rendered my country. William Ellery, the guy we talked about earlier, saw his home, his property, everything burned to the ground. Thomas Lynch Jr., delegate from South Carolina, his health was ruined from serving in the Continental Army, so the doctors ordered him to go to the West Indies to seek a cure for what was wrong with him. On the way there, him and his wife were drowned at sea. Edward Rutledge, Arthur Middleton, and Thomas Hayward Jr., the other three signers from South Carolina, they were captured by the British. Basically, everything they had was destroyed, burned to the ground. They died with nothing. Thomas Nelson, signer from Virginia, he was commander of the Virginia Army, and he was known for, after he was in the Army, British soldiers took over his estate, and they set up headquarters in his house. And so Nelson took cannons and destroyed his own estate in an effort to drive the British out. And he raised over $2 million for the Revolutionary Army by giving his own money, his estates, all that stuff. And after the war was over, the newer Congress refused to honor those loans, so he lost everything and died an impoverished man. So out of the 56 who signed it, 9 died of wounds or hardship during the war. 5 were captured and imprisoned and treated with horrendous brutality since they were signers. All of the signers turned out to be victims of manhunts and driven from their homes. Several lost wives, sons, or entire families. I mean, one guy lost 13 children out of the deal. 12 signers had their homes burned, and 17 completely lost everything they owned. Yet not one single one of them went back on their word and said, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. Not a single one of them. And that's where New Jersey signer Abraham Clark comes in. He had 2 sons in the Revolutionary Army. They were both captured and sent to the Hell Ship Jersey. It was a big prison ship that was anchored down in New York Harbor. 11,000 Americans would go there to die. And these boys were treated with special brutality because of what their father had done. The war was all but over. We had beat them. There was nothing more the British could do. The British come to Abraham Clark and said, you know what, we'll give you both your sons back if you'll recant right now and come out for the king. And no one would have blamed Abraham Clark. The war was over, basically. But his answer to the British soldiers was no. Think about that. So as we all set out today to go drink a few beers, hang out with everybody, and have a good time, everybody stop and look around once. Look at everything you have, your home, your buildings, your vehicles, your wife, your children. Now think about the guys who gave up every single bit of that so that their country might be a better place. The same guys who could have said, fuck it, it ain't my problem. You know what? I've got enough money to get through this. I don't care. Let them tax us. Who gives a shit? But they didn't. I've said it 100 times. I love my country. I love the people in this country. But I am sick and fucking tired of the people who run this country. We as Americans got to learn to stick together. Quit fighting over the stupid little shit that don't amount to fucking anything. We got to stop that. We got to put a stop to these motherfuckers in Washington, D.C. and these state houses. It's bullshit. So have a happy 4th today, but don't forget what it took to get here. And if you would like to read that speech entirely, just Google Rush Limbaugh's father's speech. You can read the whole thing. It's a very good speech.